First of all, thank you very much for your attendance today. You didn't know whether it was going to rain or not. Hopefully it will not. But I'm understanding that you are quite used to rain here in Georgia, huh? Not quite 40 days and 40 nights, but you pushed a record. You got to 30, and the whole world knows you exist. Used to be the Georgia Peaches. Now it's the Georgia Pontoons, if you will. But don't feel either afraid of that or worried about that, because the whole world will soon be catching you as we get into the time of catastrophes and plagues. And I'm not saying that to frighten you, because I'd be probably as frightened as you are if I didn't believe that if I continue to do what I'm supposed to do, they'll make a way. And if they don't make a way, I'll go with a clear conscience, as all of us will go one time or another anyway. But our world, our planet, our continents are plagued right now with all kind of potential catastrophes that are happening or possibly will happen. There's a double name almost for this presentation. I really don't want to call it a lecture, because we're going to cover so many subjects. Iriola and Sister Nma will definitely be able to sell this one, because even though I understand what I'm doing, time is getting short and it becomes harder and harder to hold back. And when an audience does come out, is supportive, and they pay well, and I appreciate all of that, I want to do my part. So we're going to cover, even though the title of it is Earthquakes, Hurricanes, Prophecies, and You, and the subtitle will be The Coming Catastrophes, Can We Survive Them? Or God-made, man-made catastrophes, Will We Be Alive in 2000? So you can get all kind of different names for it. I don't know which one to call it, because as I do research, as I do travel, as I have the helpfulness of the Creator to unlock more and more things that used to be mysteries, the titles become almost inconsequential. The subject matter becomes very paramount. As you've probably seen, how many of you bought any of my tapes before? Thank you. How many of you were here about a year ago when I was here? Double thank you. See, you want to get hurt twice. No, I mean, no. In studying so many different fields, and I'm old enough to have done so, it becomes difficult to know which one I like the best. I am an ordained minister. I gave up a church, because some of you have asked me this kind of independently, so I'll say it collectively and you don't have to ask anymore. I gave up a church that was really beginning to prosper. I probably could have retired from churchdom had I kept with that. But I find I'm not a hypocrite. I cannot do or say what I cannot believe in thoroughly. And of course, when I was a younger man, I wanted to be a minister, and I was both ordained a minister as well as a graduate from a school of divinity. And I had a church that was really growing, and then I found one of the good buddies of mine said, you ought to talk to some of the people that are backing you there. They may not be backing you as much as you thought. And I got angry with him before he told me that. He said, I'm doing it because I am one of the few friends seemingly you have. And I found out that they were already going to divide up the monies that were coming in, going to get on into a tithing role, incorporating some of the things, the lockouts and lock-ins that I've seen some of the ministers do, and just various and sundry things. And so I met with them, and they made a tape. The guy made a tape for me and said, here, you listen to the voices. So I walked away from that one, and I told them, if you're already arguing about what we don't have, instead of beginning to be better at what we are presenting, then you probably know a better way to do this than I, and I left it. I have not looked back, and that's it. And doing even more studies into the Bible and more studies into some of the secret organizations that promoted the printing of the new Bibles, and understanding that it's being changed on a consistent basis, that led me to a whole plethora of subject matter. And I have a tape that I didn't even want to put out. I held back this information for close to 18 years. And then I found somebody had gotten the tape out of our master file, and it was being circulated throughout the country. When I have done the lecture, it's been to close Sirius, when usually it comes in a course that I teach called Expanding Consciousness. And in so doing, one of the last subjects that I teach is the true story of Christianity. Well, somebody had gotten hold of this and put it out. So once I said, well, I'm out there anyway, I might as well make the money for it too. My cost for the video on that is $50, $49.95, and I don't even bat an eye about it. The cost for the audio is close to the same thing, but it breaks down the whole thing on the Council of Nicene, the coming of Apollonius, the whole bit. Why do I throw that out too? Because for a long time, and I know many lecturers who just harp on that one subject, and comparative religions, if you would. In 1960, very young man, and I had an experience that changed again the course of my life. And that was when, as far as I'm concerned, I met two extraterrestrials. Now, I've said on the tapes, and I did one at the Nation of Islam with the sanction of Minister Farrakhan at Mosque Mariam and at the Final Call in Chicago. Some of you may have even seen those tapes. They're now some, I guess, 8 years old. Time flies. When I talked about this, I talked about it because the extraterrestrials that I met were black. I have read of none of the other books, and I hope that you will help me and make me intelligent by telling me the books that talk about extraterrestrials that are black. Okay? The ones I met were, and how did I know they were? I got a tape, Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind. That came out 1 month after the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out. I called mine the Fourth Kind. And because of what they told me, because of what they showed me, and because of what they were able to do, which I have not seen any man duplicate yet, I was impressed. It takes a lot to impress me. I was impressed, very much so. And I knew I was out of my league, and that's when I wanted to find out how they could do what they did and where they were coming from. So that led me on a course of study, because at that time I had received a lot of honorary degrees. I was very much in demand in the corporate world. I always wanted to do for self, so I had my own business. And I had a big decision to make, and I had prayed and meditated and done everything. And I find, let me kind of say this too, I find when things change for me, it's probably the same time and way that they change for you. I have to get on fire with something. I got to really get into it with all my heart, soul, mind, and body. My etheric, my astral, my mental, my causal, the whole bit. I've got to deal with it. Once that happens, within 30 days' time, and now I'm finding it's even a shorter space of time, things move for me. But if I don't get on fire with it, daggone it, it seems to stagnate, it seems to go around, circumlocute, so on again like this. Well, I had gotten on fire because it was a crossroads in my life. If there were spaceships and extraterrestrials, if there were aliens and there were life on other worlds, then for me to get into a 9 to 5, seeking to satisfy some man or woman, taking half of my life source away, and then having only enough time to study on the weekends and have to live for TGIF, then, I wasn't going to go both ways. Fortunately, the Creator, being good, answered my fervent wish, and I got to see 3 UFOs close up. I got to talk with these people, and after that, I didn't need personally any other fulfillment. That was like a lifelong dream. It meant more to me than the degrees that I still get conferred on me and all the rest of it, because it let me know that I had found a truth. I don't know if you've ever heard any of my tapes or if you've taken any of my classes, but there's a saying, it's a pet saying I've used for 28 years. There is no truth until you decide what truth is. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart, and I didn't realize how droit a statement that was when it was formulated, because we are all a product of our truths. We're all a product of what we fervently believe. I also say now that I've gotten deeper into meditation and understand the parable of magnetism and drawing forth, that that is the way all things are granted to the Creator's children. You have to want it so badly that you're willing to pay the price for it, and the price does not have anything to do with money. It's sacrifice, discipline, things along this line. Only then do I get it, but once you get it that way, it doesn't matter from white man, brown man, black man, yellow man, or green man has to say, you know it for your truth. It doesn't matter what mommy or daddy says, or sister or brother, or husband or wife. It doesn't matter what minister or teacher says, you know. And that's the only thing that marks your soul engram, so you can carry with you the things that are necessary. I repeat to you that because it no longer is going to matter what the media is telling you, what the teacher is telling you, or what the minister is telling you. It matters what you really understand for self. Because when this judgment day, and I know some of you may have just left church, comes about, you will judge yourself, and your soul will not lie. And the soul will reveal everything that you've ever engraved upon it. At least that's my truth. So it kind of behooves us at this time to find some truths about some things. You've heard me state before that most of the things we have been taught are 359 degrees in opposition. If you take most of the things you've learned as basic truths and turn them around almost into a full circle, you'll come closer to the truth. Now that's a heck of a statement. And I realize I just made it. And I know if I was in the audience listening to a nut come up here and say something like that, I would look at him very jaundicely and say, my brother, why did you choose to go off on night point or gun point when you didn't have to? You didn't have to say that, but you did. Well, believe me, I mean it. From the little research that I have done, almost everything we have been taught under this training program that we call education is childish, childlike. They will never educate you collectively, sometimes not even individually, if you may become dangerous, to overthrow them, to refute their libraries and change their schooling system, change their governmental process, or their social mores. You wouldn't either if you were on top. And most of you, being students of black history, understand already that collectively the good and powerful things of earth were spirited away from the black race. They were taken away so long ago that we even asked our question now, how could we possibly have gone so far and so high, according to anthropologists and historians, and fall so low? I'll give you an easy answer. It was to disseminate against the non-spiritual people of earth and keep the planet alive and in a collective free zone for a few more eons of time. Other than that, this planet would have been destroyed a long time ago. You are the soul savers, but in soul saving, you forgot who you were. The planet is about to restore who you were by restoring its consciousness. It's been in a coma for some time. A collective soul strong enough to think it could take on being a planet on the edges of a free will zone. What do I mean by that? According to metaphysical teachings, the deeper ones, and many of you are beginning to come into the same consciousness, so I'm only stimulating what you already feel. We are part of the system of Sirius. We are on one of the distant suns of Sirius. And this planet has been an experimental enterprise for some time, where the collective mentality of many galaxies and 2 constellations came to bring here the beautiful, perfect Tierra, that's our planet, Tierra, enabling it to bring forth life on different scales. The mistake was made, however, that it brought forth life from what is called the laggards, the ones on other planets who couldn't make the grade, who were its criminals, its downfallers, its retarders, and brought them here thinking that the great white lodges of the pyramids and the underworld could teach them. And that's where we collectively made a big mistake, a mistake we're still paying for. If any of you are doing any kind of traveling, whether it be mentally in front of a dictionary, encyclopedia, TV set, or other type of media, if you're doing it in the form of airlines and planes and boats and trains, you know that our Earth over the last 30 years has become a very unstable place. If you don't know that, then you better get on some of those boats and planes and trains and things and begin to get out from the TV set and begin to understand what time it is. There are droughts in 7 different countries as we speak. There are floods, and you, as I speak, know well of that, throughout the United States, but in China, in Peru, in areas of India. There are earthquakes happening every moment of every minute as I speak to you now. In Matsushiro, Japan alone, there are 3,000 quakes per hour. Just constant tremors going on there. On the sacred islands of Osaka, amongst the Japanese Isles, even the ancient tombs there, for this is their most religious sacred islands, and it says that Osaka is joined by tunnels to the Dalai Lama, that the great Buddha, the Eightfold Path teacher, has residence in our world, entered into from the islands of Osaka. How well we don't know, how well we know, who knows? That is their legend. Osaka is even rocking and rolling. There are all kind of seiches on freshwater inland ports, big waves that roll from lake to lake. There are all kind of whirlpools and tidal waves on the oceanics, and the oceanic islands are being besieged with them. Watch very closely what's going to be happening there at Haiti, by the way, too, and in Cuba in 1997. Remember, you heard it here. There is so much happening on our planet at this time. Planes are falling that you don't even hear reported. Did you just hear what I said? You heard about the one that fell at Pittsburgh. But I'm telling you, planes are falling they're not even reporting. Some of which are being blown out of the sky by very nasty people who don't want other people to testify, like in the last one in Pittsburgh, which is just beginning to leak out, possibly now. Did the same thing in Chicago with the black woman back in, 63, that was going to testify. Really, that's what happened with KLM Airlines, too, again, if you go back and really understand the truth. That's CIA-1 property. You see, so much is going on as the forces, and you've heard this depicted in the movies, for good, now are becoming strong enough to combat the forces that are bad. That has always been an opposition in the universe. But here, in this free will zone, it's becoming something that everyone will have to be aware of, if you would. Many of the prophets and prophecies that the prophets expounded are happening. We'll go back to the one book that most black people feel that they understand more than any other, the Holy Bible. And if we look through the book of Job and the book of Revelations, we find in there many things that are talked about that seemingly may have a correlation, a correlate, in the times that we're living within. There is within that the prophecies of the 7 golden candlesticks and the beast mark, 666, and many other tribunals that will come together on the harlot that sits on 13 hills and dispenses again toward those that would fall victims of her harlotism, her misinformation, her low vibrations. These double talks are not really so much double talk nowadays because many things that we've previously heard about are beginning to be able to be understood. How many of you read or attempted to read or have interpreted the quatrains of Nostradamus? If you realize and have, you realize that they could mean almost anything, almost at any time, even though some of the books state specifically this is what this refers to. They're very difficult to interpret, the original quatrains. How many of you are aware of the Sleeping Prophet books and many other things from ARE Society, the Edgar Cayce Society, that talks about the things that he predicted? How many of you are aware of those? We find that they've now, when I first began to buy their books, they had one big compendium. Now they're putting it out in separate books. You make more money that way. I can appreciate that. But at the same time, it takes you longer to get the information, and you don't understand how he entwines some of that information when now the subject is being pulled out. But he, in turn, talks about many of the things that will be happening on the islands and on the so-called 7 continents. We really only have 6. Europe is not a continent. That's what is confusing a lot of people, too. There's a Mother Shipton that lived in Louisiana, died about 1962, was an excellent oracle, channeler. She was a black woman and consequently didn't get the just due. In fact, she would make probably Edgar Cayce seem almost like a child. But I was able to get hold of some of her prophecies. And then, as a meditator and channeler, and I am both, and having had spiritual circles for, I guess, about 25 years under our branch of the Aquarian Church called the Meta Center, I now also have begun to be able to channel somewhat. Not as good as they, and not on demand like some of these people on radio and TV can do, but enough where when the members hear me and it's recorded, it astounds me what begins to come through. With all of those things, we compiled a little booklet called The prophecies to the year 2000. Within that, we have a special earthquake insert. It is the 20 most earthquake-prone cities in the United States and why. Some of you already asked me that. It's right in this little pamphlet. Sells is a very expensive thing, costs $3.50. Right? It's all right there. These prophecies have not been changed in 15 years. I haven't had to. They speak for themselves. Only two do I wonder about when is it going to happen, and that's a person calling themselves God to appear in the Gobi Desert. Everything else here, you can almost begin to see now what's happening with it. Some of the things that are mentioned in here is that there will be new lands appearing in the Gulf of California. That will begin to happen in the next 2 years. We can see how on time this is. That in the Red Sea and the Pacific and Arctic Oceans, new lands will appear. And in Jamaica and in Bimini in the Caribbean, new lands also to appear. One of the reasons why the so-called triangles of terror, it's not just the Bermuda Triangle, but 12 other triangles throughout the world, the China Sea, Red Sea, and places that you don't hear about because the governments don't want you to think that you live on an unstable planet. They want you to think everything is under control. It is, but not by them. When you begin to look at these areas and really begin to see what is possibly happening on our planet, it is astounding. Did you know that in July alone, there were 5 ships that lost themselves in the Bermuda Triangle? Why don't you hear that on all the TV reports? Why isn't that major headlines? In the Gulf of China and in the Red Sea, there's always something disappearing or appearing. What do I mean by that? In the Red Sea and also along the Straits of Madagascar, they have seen sea serpents. They travel in